Good evening, everyone. I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to you all for coming out to support our concern about the 7 proposed cell antenna in our beautiful Devonport. I've been a resident here for 35 years and I've been a member of SaferTech, which is the organisation that's put on this event tonight, for the last 3 years. I'll just hand you over to our MC, Michael Fleck. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Devonport. What a wonderful group you are. Amazing you come out on a night like this. My name is Michael Fleck, and I used to live in Devonport. It's still close to my heart. It's my second home when I'm in the North Island. And I do live in Waiheke now, and it's important that I'm here tonight because what happens in Devonport eventually floats over to Waiheke. So we're taking alert of what happens tonight. I've been researching this issue for over 6 years. It's serious, it's everywhere, it's invisible, and it's probably the most prevalent harm happening to us, unknown to us in most cases. And tonight we're going to briefly let you know what triggered this meeting. Most of you have an idea, and what we want to get to by the end of the evening. We would like to see a committed core group of people starting a local campaign. We have several ideas for strategies for proceeding. And if you want to stay with us after the end of the main meeting, please sit down for a few minutes with us and let's move forward together. Those of you in the back with that alarm annoying you, can you still hear me? Yes. Okay, feel free to shuffle a little closer to the front, away from the alarm, please. Some of you, like a few of us, received a letter in the post some weeks ago from 1NZ. When I had a look at it, I became a bit upset because it's filled with lies. The first page had 10 lies, the second page, 7 lies. Those of us who have done the research know what the evidence is about wireless radiation, recognize the lies immediately. Most people, if they haven't done the research, paid attention, come to meetings like this, it just goes right by them. So I'm going to introduce, first of all, a local Devonport colleague, although I didn't know him when I first lived here. He's my colleague now, Scott Wilson.
Save the applause till after you've heard what I've said. My name's Scott Wilson. My wife and family are long-time residents of Devonport, having lived here for 45 years. Over that time, we've seen numerous changes, as you can imagine. For more than 100 years, Devonport was an independently governed borough. After a major battle with the government, Devonport was forced to become part of North Shore City, subsequently incorporated into the newly created Auckland Council in 2010. We have never lost our independent spirit, but today we are facing an ever-increasing loss of power over what we can and cannot control. About 4 weeks ago, we received in our mailbox a 4-page leaflet from One New Zealand informing us of a proposed small cell antenna array to be erected on a lamppost under 15 metres from our bedroom window. From their literature, we were informed that 5G scientific studies convinced experts that 5G technology poses no risk to human health. I wonder then why France banned the use of Wi-Fi in early childhood centres and limited its use in primary schools. Why an alliance of 100 municipalities throughout Italy said no to 5G. Why a law firm in Santa Rosa, California issued a cease and desist order to the mayor and councillors of the city with respect to the installation of small 5G cell units. The WHO has classified existing 3G, 4G and Wi-Fi frequencies as Class 2B carcinogens. Sorry. Here in New Zealand, our safety standards fall far short of those in other countries. I voiced my concern and suggestions to Community Relations at 40 South about the proximity of the antennas to my home. There must be poles in Devonport that are substantially distanced from homes and schools that would reduce exposure. Evidence also exists of the reduction in property values in homes next to these sites. In return, I received a cut and paste reply addressing none of my concerns or suggestions, giving lie to their assertion of valuing public feedback. I also sent an email to Simon Watts, our local MP, only to get back the standard, he's very busy, etc., etc. Local councils and ratepayers have no say in how the telcos operate their highly profitable businesses. They virtually write their own regulations. It's past time for this to change. I would urge everyone to visit SaferTech.co.nz and look at their research page that looks at peer-reviewed studies that contradict the safe narrative. Better be safe than sorry. That's me.
I just wonder if anybody has a question or two that they would like to ask Scott.
I'm married. Sorry, ladies.
Yes.
You know, they put those mini cell phone towers in the when they had their Mercus Cafe.
Which cafe?
Mercus Cap, they put the mini cell phone towers in the bush bins.
Oh, that's right. They did. Yeah.
I don't usually do this. I'd say all join Law Council and give them a bill of exchange and don't pay your rates for a start, because they're not listening to anyone. So now we're going to have to start charging them. And also there's acts against crimes of poisoning humanity. So we have to play their game.
Right.
I'm not paying my rates anyway. I've already got my pitchfork ready.
Good. Right.
But New Zealand is too sleepy.
Well, we are probably the New Zealanders who are going to help wake up our neighbors.
Yeah, but it's not just about waking up.
Yeah.
The awake need to awake as well and realise that we've all been duped. It's all a legal fiction, and we need to start charging them for their crimes to our exposures of what they're actually doing.
Thank you. Yeah, that's on the agenda, legal actions.
I mean, lawfully, look up all the acts and statutes.
Okay,
Laws,
thank you.
real ones.
We're going to touch on that with one of our other speakers as well.
Oh, great.
Yes, and I just want to mention, we did invite all the community board members. We did receive an apology from Tony Fontander, had to be at another engagement this evening. And we invited councillors, Richard Hills and Chris Darby. Haven't heard back from them. Simon Watts sent an apology. So when you do see the people you've elected face to face, let them know what they're missing tonight and why they need to know about what's happening, please.
They want to know, or they're doing as they're told.
Well, they need to
A
do,
lot of money laundering going on in New Zealand behind the scenes.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
There's a lady over there.
Yes.
Scott, I'm sorry, was everyone supposed to get this letter, or just people with the towers close to
I
them?
put 100 leaflets around the neighbourhood, and I got one reply from some chap down the road. He hadn't received anything. I think it was only the houses and visual contact of the telephone pole.
What did the phone company's letter say to you? I think we need to assume we know nothing and just ask them, what are these towers for? Because they're not for our cell phones. My phone works perfectly fine. It worked perfectly fine before the towers went up. So what are they for?
Well, they have been having these supposed outages in the last 6 months to prepare us for the inevitable. Here's the solution. But before that, I never had any problem with Wi-Fi, telephone. So, yeah, those questions need to be asked.
Did they tell you in the letter what the towers are, what your tower is for?
Just about with technology moving on and the increased demand, and I'll get it to you to read. But,
Be good to assume nothing and go back to them and have them answer what exactly these are for and what exactly they are doing to benefit us and also the harms involved in having them near our homes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's one of the things we are addressing. If you look at the wall over above the information table on the left as you go out, there are color photographs of the 8 locations that have been determined by one for these new cell sites. And they may be near you on your street. We have another speaker. We have 3 more speakers. I'd like to introduce Dr. Robin Kelly, who's been with us a number of years on this campaign, speaking publicly as a family physician and as someone who's been seeing people in the clinic on a regular basis with the effects of some of this energy. Robin? Welcome.
How long have I got? I don't mean in years. I mean in minutes. Well, as long as I hold your attention. Actually, I've got a lot of stuff, but I think, can you see, I may have too much. So I gave talks 4 years ago to the medical communities and did some lectures on this, and I've sort of quickly adapted this to this audience, who I have to say look more intelligent than my medical friends. And very briefly, but I've really got to go very quickly. And there will be a lot of information over there. Don't try to see it all, because I can actually give you all this PowerPoint and send it all to you. It's really to give you a feel of the depth of science there is about the dangers of this stuff, and why internationally I think it is being, while there's this neglect about the real science. And we possibly have heard that in the last few years too. So there are parallels, I have to say. That's a bit about me, and that's enough about me. But it's really not about me, it's about my grandkids, this. And I think we've got all ages here, but I think we have elders here. And I do think it's probably our role now to remember what life used to be like, and to somehow impart that on others. So there's these. It's for these guys, and it's for this place. We're naturally attuned to absorb resonances from nature, called the Schumann resonances. Many of you will know this. The lightning strikes, particularly in the equator, in the rainforests there. And that interaction between that and the solar energy creates very low frequencies, which our bodies love. And there's recent studies to show our blood pressures actually reduce down because of these frequencies. No surprise there, because if we go to the bush or to Cheltenham Beach, we feel more relaxed. And so our bodies, over probably millions of years now, and the 4 billion years life has been on this planet, have adapted to totally different frequencies. These are low frequencies. But there are different things planned for us. It's not only Elon Musk that is planning this. There are going to be 57,000 satellites in 5 years' time.
It's actually 100,000.
100,000, sorry, I'm slow. Absolutely, standing room only up there. And they're going to be linked to all your towers and your cell phones, sorry.
Can you magnify that left hand thing?
It's probably not going to come much clearer than that. But it's really just showing that SpaceX is only part of this. And I suppose what I've learned is what we're up against. Sun Tzu, which is the art of war, means that we need to know who we're up against, know our enemies. If you know your enemy and yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you also suffer a defeat. And I'm talking from experience here, because we need to be very smart in a non-smart city. We need to be very smart about which direction we can go, because we expend a lot of energy needlessly. For every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. And this is the vision. This is what they want Devonport to be like. Now, when I come to Devonport, I don't particularly want this. I want to get another feeling. I want to go to the second-hand bookshops and the wine bars and the music, and I want to feel something different. It's a very special place. The energy of this place is incredibly special. And as you can see, all those things that are planned, e-health, domotics, that's domestic robotics, car-to-car, smart cars, 50-minute cities. This is what it's all about. This is the plan. This is what we're up against. And not only that, the media is not on our side. Here you've got New York Times linking in with Verizon Wireless. They want a 5G partnership. That means that because of the narrow bandwidth, they can put more and more information into smaller bandwidths, and they can create virtual realities. And so for those few of us who actually watch the news, it'll be even more real and deep fake than it will be in the future. So we will not here get support from mainstream media if they survive. So AI and 5G are linked. AI, 5G, and intellect, and the Internet of Things, which is basically your vacuum cleaner talking to your fridge, if you want that. And so we will be gaslit. If you think that you're trying to oppose this, you will be put in the same category as those with foil hats. And I tell you, if you're in a microwave, don't put your foil hat on if you put your head in the microwave. You will be called a conspiracy theorist, like poor old Caesar here. Et tu, Brute, he said. And of course, Brutus replies, bloody conspiracy theorist. Interesting enough, there was a certain city in China that was going to be one of the first smart cities, 5G cities, AI cities in the world. You may know this name. Its name is Wuhan, and it was planned. And it became a fully 5G city in 2019. Wuhan, the capital of Hubei, is one of the first pilot cities of the 5G network in China. It's been apparently very successful because it includes intelligent education, intelligent medical treatment, driverless vehicles, intelligent tourism, smart transportation, and intelligent enterprises. What could possibly go wrong? So this is the plan. This is the plan not just for Devonport, for the whole of Auckland. And this was, a lot of my stuff is 4 years old because I've been sort of distracted in the last 4 years, I'm afraid. Vodafone's head, Tony Baird, then said, poles would be built every few hundred meters on houses and light poles. And that happens, and that will happen in more than 5 years from now, where we're about that now. And this has been going for a long time. Yes, it's amazing and all, technology and all, but now that everybody has one, nobody communicates directly with each other anymore. So I do have sort of real concerns about the effect of these things on our mental health, not just our physical health, which of course are totally together. So I have this weird view of health that it could be something that this is more to the point. However, what has been planned for our health is something particularly different and dependent on 5G and dependent on artificial intelligence. And this is about, in healthcare, we predict 76 billion US dollars revenue in 2026 for operators addressing healthcare transformation. So they call this the healthcare transformation. That our healthcare in the future will be dependent on AI, gene splicing, mRNA medications. To me, that doesn't mean health at all. I've never asked anybody when they're sick what they need. What they need is community and loved ones and possibly some good healthcare. So we're up against this massive investment internationally. I'll flip through these. Not only that, we're up against the military-industrial complex as well, because 5G is needed on the battlefield. Even though we've known that there's information from the 70s, which has been declassified, which states how dangerous microwave technology is. And this stuff has been declassified. I'll rip through this because I think the importance of this is that they've known for over 50 years that this is dangerous. And it's also important for the military complex to keep that quiet. As you know, the electromagnetic spectrum, what we're talking about are microwaves. So the actual waves are smaller and smaller, the frequency is quicker and quicker, and they can put more and more information in smaller and smaller bits. And so we're actually going to be approaching visible light. So we're going from microwave to infrared, and it's resonating with smaller and smaller bits of us, including bees. Now, what you'll hear from those who disagree with us is they say, well, non-ionizing radiation, which means they're not so small as to affect the atoms, isn't dangerous. And that's completely wrong. And very quickly, I'll show you that. How much more time have I got? Because are you interested in this? Yeah. Okay, right. Because I've got to sort of motor mouth a little bit from this, and I'm going to cut through. And it's so I was part, in the last few years, of a group of scientists around the world that were seriously worried about this. And I'll read this out because it probably will show that around the world there are people who in support. We, the undersigned scientists and doctors, recommend a moratorium on the rollout of the 5th generation 5G for telecommunication until potential hazards for human health and the environment have been fully investigated by scientists independent from the industry. 5G will substantially increase exposure to radio frequency electromagnetic fields on top of the 2G, 3G, 4G and Wi-Fi for telecommunications already in place. These fields have been proven to be harmful to humans and the environment. So remember, the 5G is on top of everything else. It's not just 5G, it's everything else. That's the cream on top. Sour cream. And on top of that, there was a big study that was done several years ago, which showed that exposing rats to the sort of frequencies that we've been exposed to before, not even 5G, caused a significant increase in brain and heart cancers. And this is known by the authorities who are talking to us. And of course, also, there's increased cancer risk, cellular stress, harmful free radicals, genetic damages, structural functional changes, etc., etc. And this not just affects us, but affects plants. I'll flip through that. This is not sure. However, and in a minute I'm going to show you how much information. I'm not going to talk about each study. I'm going to just show that there's masses of studies that show this. This is our advisor. This is Juliet Gerard, who is the chief scientific advisor up until today, actually, to our government and to our previous prime minister. And she's totally happy. She said she's totally happy with the way things are. She is not a medical doctor. She actually is producing artificial skin, which there may be some benefits from. And she sees the future as being a combination between us and we're a hybrid with technology. So there's a transhumanist agenda. And she looks lovely, I know. She looks very mumsy. And she's been funded by the Callaghan Innovation, which is really the focus of driving New Zealand into the technocratic the technocratic age, basically, which is going to be focusing on AI and technology. This is the way that they see this. This is the power that's behind this. Yes, I would, yeah. So myth number one is only ionizing radiation is harmful. Non-ionizing radio frequency radiation is safe. That's the myth. Now, the actual what they're saying is that this stuff isn't enough to burn the skin, because the same technology is used to disperse crowds, and they will aim 5G at people and they'll feel a burning on their skin, and therefore they'll disperse. And they will say that anything under that, anything, even though we're in it all the time, is not relevant. So that's a myth. The frequencies and pulsations, I think Alexei will be talking about, actually this isn't just the stuff that's around, this will be aimed and focused on people and pulsating. And that has been, in fact, there's been no great studies on 5G, and particularly on the frequencies and the pulsations. And that those who are anti this are just conservative, well, just Luddites. And it's also undergone independent safety tested. It hasn't at all. And they can't penetrate past the skin. This is the sort of idea that the skin isn't that important, even though, if we lose our skin due to burning, we die. Also, we're covered with a microbiome. We've got all the bacteria that we need to balance our bodies and our skin and our bowels. So currently the safety limits are set about 1 million times too high. This comes from a group of doctors in the UK. They were set in the 90s to protect only from thermal heating effects and failed to protect from copiously documented non-thermal effects. Other countries have safety limits orders of magnitudes below us in the UK, and we're about the same as the UK. And one of the, I suppose, the main pathological effects is how it affects the linings of our cells. It actually encourages calcium through ionic effects to go into the cell, and that causes a buildup of free radicals known as oxidative stress. And that is associated with inflammatory conditions and cancer, and pretty well all chronic conditions. And this is what it says here, and heart conditions. And this is what it says here. And this is what it says here. So these are the studies that you're told don't exist. And I'm just going to flick through them. This is all on oxidative stress. All peer-reviewed. All peer-reviewed. On top of that, there was this big study done on rats. And the evidence, and it cost the US government 25 million, this study. And there was clear evidence of tumours in the hearts of male rats. The tumours were malignant schwannomas. And our own experts responded to this by saying, recently the most extensive studies have yet have shown some possible cancer increases in male rats with lifelong exposure, but with no similar increase in female rats or in male or female rats. And these were their computing inputs. So these are the advisors to our government. I questioned this in our medical journal. And I said this: it appears that Elwood and Wood have interpreted clear evidence of tumours as some possible cancer increases. As no further explanation is given, the readers are left wondering whether this is a gross oversight, reflects a criticism, or even conscious denial of the conclusions stated on the NTP web page to which they have been personally directed. And of course they answered me saying, Robin, it's not that simple. There's not only there's a concern about cancers, my also concern is the evidence this is also contributing to antibiotic resistance, particularly of E. coli. Now, many, particularly women, are susceptible to urinary tract infections. And if they're not treated quickly, that will spread to the kidney and potentially complex problems arise with kidney failure and potential death. I'm really worried about how this is contributing to this phenomenon. I'm going to flip through because I know I've probably outstayed my welcome a bit. But just to cut a long story short, the WHO and the UN did not respond to our concerns. Does that surprise you? They actually were saying that it's more important for health to have good communication through this than it is to have any concerns at all about that we have raised. In fact, I don't think they care. I think there's a whole group of the world that couldn't give a damn if people are suffering from this. And this is just some indication how all the advisors are all interlinked in these different groups. And they're not doctors. Most of them are industry people, given industry advice. And they report things like this. They look at the evidence and say the evidence considered overall has not demonstrated any adverse health effect of these field exposure between internationally accepted guideline levels. But when you look closely, 78% of the studies show damage to male reproductive health. 97 show effects on proteins or cell membranes. 79% show an increase in the damaging condition of oxidative stress. 80% show loss of cells and brains from prenatal or neonatal exposures. 52% show evidence of genetic damage. So the conclusion they made is false, what we call cherry-picked and not evidence-based. It was incorrect and misleading. Saying they missed out a majority of the studies when it comes to male fertility. And even more concerning for me is the evidence that's emerging that those women who are pregnant exposed to this, it will affect their children, their female offspring, the fetus, and it may affect the female fetus's fertility in future years. This is really just our New Zealand's position on this. Really just saying that there's no consistently reproducible or persuasive evidence of health effects for any cause. A shout out to Sue Pocket, is she here at all? Who actually was one of the campaigners who understood what was going on before and challenged these experts. In early 2019, a request under the FOI to the Ministry of Health to supply the names who are actually deciding this produced only a statement from someone styled Deputy General, Director General, Population Health and Prevention, whoever that is. The Ministry does not usually release names of these as these often change, and the members represent their organisations, unlike most committees where the person is there for their own specific expertise. And together with Sue, this is a paper that we combined in writing, outlining the health risks here and in Australia. So that's a lot of information. We've been here before. If you look at that, that was the encouraging mothers to smoke and the babies. Cyprus, it's worth looking at what Cyprus is doing. Cyprus has got a campaign backed by the government resisting Wi-Fi in schools and in kindergartens. And this is a very good education site. If you make a note of that, there's a questionnaire in there and a bit of teaching on how we should be going about this in the workplace. And so I think there are some positives that are out there. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Does anyone have a question? A couple of questions for Robin?
What are you concerned about they've already working on 7G network, which uses terabyte radiation? Are you concerned about that one?
To the
They've got 7G, they're working on
with the terabyte.
terabyte radiation, which is actually the radiation so small it can actually catch atoms. Are you concerned about that? Or do you even know about that?
Oh, you mean even getting even smaller?
Yeah, the 7G, they've got that now. Actually, the US defense researchers using that at the moment for the space. That's
Yeah.
why
I think 5G is just the stepping stone to 6G and 7G. Those higher, the terahertz, and you probably know more than about this, actually resonate with our sweat glands. So if we're anxious and sweating, it could be even worse. And of course, it provides an opening for the whole body, resonating with water and oxygen. That's the other thought. Do I know about it? Yeah, they're not going to stop here.
One thing they've mentioned is that the 5G or whatever, however high it goes, is going to scavenge the oxygen out of the atmosphere. Has that been proven?
Yeah, they were talking about sort of 60 gigahertz actually resonating with oxygen molecules and actually affecting how we breathe. It's a bit controversial. I haven't looked too much into that, but it was there was a lot of thought about this early in the COVID crisis, let's call it, in the last 3 or 4 years. And it was used against those people who were concerned about it. So I don't know if you know any more, Alexei, about this.
So at 60 gigahertz or around there, it's the absorption frequency of oxygen. Similarly with Wi-Fi or microwaves at 2.4 gigahertz, water absorbs it the best there. That's why microwaves use that, and they can actually vibrate it. At 60 gigahertz, oxygen starts to vibrate. And the theory is it starts to vibrate and it's no longer available for hemoglobin to hold on to it. Whether it's been tested in practice, I don't know, I haven't found anything about it, but oxygen does have an absorption peak at 60 or around there, something like 57 or 58 gigahertz.
And it's only 22% of the atmosphere is oxygen, sorry. We don't have a lot of it in the atmosphere.
Absolutely.
There's almost 80% of our atmosphere is nitrogen.
They tested on themselves first.
One more question?
One more question?
Yes, Robin, you said, they're not going to stop here. You mean at 5G, right?
Yeah.
What is the purpose of going to 6G, 7G, whatever?
Kill us all.
What is their purpose?
Money.
Yeah, but
They're not like us, right? They have empty lives.
I know that.
They haven't fulfilled, they're not beautiful, and not inside. I think it's getting closer and closer to our visible spectrum. So we'll be able to produce a total virtual reality, which is indistinguishable. Not to us. We'll work it out, but to a lot of people, younger people. I mean, it's getting closer to that. So they'll be able to escape. It's about, the link in with transhumanism and all that stuff, And we're here thinking, actually, it's not bad to be human. It's quite a good thing. We like that. We like nature. Yeah. I don't know. Can't get into their heads. I think majority are just following. But it's so important. I see this group as important because it's a community. And a lot of this is not about a community. It's about connecting globally, but with the wrong ideas. Not connecting locally with good ideas.
Well said.
Just one more, maybe.
One more, Wendy.
Thank you. Our Resource Management Act protects the quality.
Sorry, come over here.
Our Resource Management Act protects the quality of air. And naturalists are saying that electromagnetic radiation pollutes the air. Now, I would like to really understand that, to argue this legally in court. Can you put it into plain English for me? How does EMF pollute the air?
I think early on I talked about what our bodies, what they like, which are these sort of low frequencies of nature that we have evolved. And it's not just that everywhere in nature. So actually it's the air is also, you get good energy, good frequencies from nature. And everything that I said in the first part is polluting that. The question is, would they listen? And I don't think so, because it's a logical argument which they're not paid to listen to. So I think it could be one of our battles that we could lose by not knowing our opposition. I think we should say it, but I don't think we should put everything into that basket. I totally agree. It's awful, isn't it?
Yes.
Hmm.
Sorry. So the Earth itself generates electromagnetic radiation. And we have evolved, all life has evolved with that.
Because of it too.
Ah, yes. Now, can you tell me in plain English how much?
I'm a doctor, but I use plain English.
How much electromagnetic radiation is life on Earth evolved to, and how does that compare with what we are producing synthetically?
Okay. Yeah, I think we've got an expert on that. But this is low frequencies. These are low frequencies that we like. So they're talking about hertz rather than gigahertz, which are many, many times there. So these are frequencies hugely higher than our bodies are comfortable with.
They're not natural.
Of course, no, they're not natural, no.
Can you say how much naturally we are accustomed to?
Yeah, we're accustomed to about 7.85 hertz, or between that and 10 hertz or so. There's some variation in the Schumann resonances. Yeah. But I think Alexei is an expert in this. Okay, enough of me.
Thank you, Bob. Good job. After we hear from the next two speakers, we'll have a general Q&A, and we'll be able to look back and speak to some of these folks again. One of the things Robin didn't have a chance to speak about was something that I know a few people in this audience are experiencing every day. It's known as EHS, electromagnetic hypersensitivity, or microwave syndrome. Have you heard the term, or you know what I'm speaking about?
Yes.
Okay. The group that I'm representing that's sponsored this evening tonight is called SaferTechNZ. And we're a group of North Shore-based people, apart from myself, who really want to educate the community about this and make changes. And one of our campaigns has been a consistent series of letters and representations to elected officials, the government regulatory agencies. We continue to run into a stonewall, or being ignored, or being given lies in response. And we know specifically that the government agency within the Ministry of Health has a conflict of interest with the man who is supposedly measuring the output of cell towers. And they do a very poor job and very inadequate job of measuring those emissions. However, he gets by with it, and he's also employed by the telecommunications company. Clear conflict. So our next speaker, and we love the range of people that we can bring to this campaign, because it's just very, very inspiring for me, is Alexei Yachine, who is an electrical engineer, and will speak to us a bit about his measurements, the work he's done on cell tower emissions, and his experience of EHS. Welcome, Alexei.
Thank you, Michael. And it's very encouraging to see so many people here tonight. Just give you a brief overview of the talk so you know what to expect. The start will be my personal EHS story, how I went through it. Then it'll dive into the health effects of electromagnetic radiation. And then lastly, and some scientific literature. And then lastly, we'll look at New Zealand's situation specifically, safety standards, and past and present emissions. Two pieces of jargon: EMR. Every time I say EMR, that's electromagnetic radiation. EMR, electromagnetic radiation. And EHS is electro-hypersensitivity, just in case you see it popping up. It's much shorter to write that than to write the full thing. So who am I? I'm a mechatronics engineer. For those of you that don't know that, what that is, it's a combination of mechanical, software, and electrical, all clumped into one. So think of robotics. I've got experience in data acquisition, analysis, and processing. From my job, we did industrial measurements for a range of different projects. I'm also a keen sportsman. When I was very young, up until about 12, I did gymnastics, and then I switched to judo, where I competed and loved that. And more recently, in the last couple of years, I've been involved in balance-type sports, so things like slacklining, unicycling. Slacklining is walking on a tightrope that's not so tight. It's a bit slack. And most of all, I'm curious, and I like to understand science. And I don't like surface level understanding. I want to know the base roots, so then you can almost derive things from the ground up. And that's how I learn. That's how I get my understanding. One of my characteristics is that I'm a high achiever. I was the national champion for judo for my weight category. Then I finished school with scholarships in maths, in statistics, and in physics, an outstanding one in physics. And then for the first 3 years of uni, I was on the Dean's Honours List, which is the top 5% of the class. In some papers, top in the class. Not all. My first experience with EHS was in the last year of uni, in 2016. I started getting very strong symptoms, mainly headaches, insomnia, concentration, and memory difficulties. It made it very difficult to learn. I was fatigued, and I started getting depression and anxiety. And now this depression, I would call it unfounded, because nobody died, nothing had happened. There was no cause for it. There was nothing I could look at and be, oh, this is causing it. It was just a very, very, very low mood out of who knows where. My academics performance dropped entirely. I went from A+ to B's and C's. I had to split up my year into 2 years just to complete uni, because I wasn't able to handle the workload anymore. I started going to doctors, and I've been going to doctors for the past 8 years. And they were all puzzled. We don't know what it is. Blood tests are normal. There's no obvious cause that they can look at a textbook and go, oh, you've got this. Here's a pill for that. I tried every option to find out what was causing this. Maybe it was migraines. Okay, I tried migraine medication. Nope, that didn't help. Maybe it's neck stiffness. Well, I started doing exercises and stretches and chiropractors. My neck feels great. Nope, that wasn't it. Maybe it's sinus problems. I had an operation a year ago now, after a long battle, because there was something there, but no, that wasn't the cause either. Well, my nose feels great. The only thing I was diagnosed with was depression, because depression is a nice blanket one where anyone feels something's wrong, oh, you're depressed, here's some pills. I treated that. Didn't get rid of the headaches though. Well, I compensated for the symptoms and I carried on. I adjusted to the new energy levels. I adjusted to the headaches. I got used to them. Going from very high achiever to average, you can still cope with life quite well. It's manageable, absolutely more than manageable. I worked in a small company doing industrial measurements, and we specialized in stress and strain monitoring. For those who don't know, it's measuring the stretch in a metal or material. And we worked on various different projects, including aircraft, measuring the fatigue in their wings to extend the life of the wings. Different vehicles like fire trucks and milk tankers and whatnot. Bridges, the Auckland Harbour Bridge is one of the most iconic ones we worked on, and I'm sure all of you living on the north, who have ever wanted to get out of the North Shore, have gone across it, and various types of industrial machines. The symptoms remained, but I was able to push through. Quality of life was not great. Daily headaches, fatigue, not as much energy, sleep was always a battle. Depression on and off, but carried on. In 2022, things got worse. The same symptoms that were always slightly in the background but manageable reoccurred with a new strength. Splitting headaches, very difficult to sleep, absolutely broken during the day, even if I did get a good night's sleep. Memory difficulties, concentration, I was not able to function normally. A new symptom occurred as well, tinnitus. It's a type of ringing in the ear. For me, it's a very high pitch, higher pitch than that alarm that's going off in the background, but it's just constant. It's like a dog whistle if you could hear a dog whistle. It used to be very quiet and I could only hear it at night, but now it's to the point where I can hear it when I'm driving a car. The car motor noise is not loud enough to drown it out. It became impossible to function normally. And I was still scratching my head. What is causing all of this? At this time, there was more and more talk about 5G. Now, being the type of person that I am, I don't like to watch a YouTube video that goes, 5G, scary, and go, oh, right, that's the thing. I like to go into the nitty-gritty, look at the actual things. So I was very skeptical about it. I decided to look into it. And I thought, why are people worried? We've got radio waves for ages. We've had radio for ages. We have Wi-Fi. This is just another radio wave. And if there was anything wrong, somebody would say something about it. There would be information about it. So I started looking. But unfortunately, I could not find any scientific study on 5G. I'm sorry to disappoint you all. I'm not going to share anything about 5G tonight. But I did find something else. What I found was that there were, and Dr. Robin Kelly attributes to this, is there are thousands of EMR studies on the health effects on humans and animals as early as the 60s. And some examples of groups that have been working on it is Bioinitiative Report, Environmental Health Trust, Building Biologists Institute, European, which is European Academic Environmental Medicine Association, Arthur Fitzberg, and other activists. And what really amazed me was the symptoms that a lot of these papers described were exactly the symptoms I was experiencing. I thought, these people are on the other side of the world writing about something else. How do they know me? So where is the source of this information? Well, the earliest ones are from Soviet literature on radio operators who, a lot of them became sick with the same symptoms. Headaches, fatigue, dizziness, concentration problems, depression, and they coined this microwave syndrome. Then later, Western scientists also came to the same conclusions as the Soviets, but they weren't so vocal about it. The World Health Organization, when it was still doing something, managed to designate it as a Class 2B cancerogen. And there have been many calls for review since, and it's way overdue. There's now more than enough evidence to put it up a class into Class 1. But they've been delaying, and no. So, theory is good, but theory is nothing unless you put it to the test. So I had a brilliant opportunity. One of my friends had a honeymoon overseas, and they asked me, can you pretty please house sit from us and look after our dogs? And you can turn off the Wi-Fi and do everything else. So I did that. I house sat, I turned off the Wi-Fi, I turned off the wireless security cameras, because it's all wireless these days. I kept my phone on airplane mode and only turned it on when I needed it. And I turned off the power to the room where I was sleeping and the adjacent rooms around it. The results for sleep were amazing. In the first week, I was surprised. I was able to fall asleep easily without melatonin. I slept through the night, and most importantly, when I woke up in the morning, I actually felt refreshed. I haven't felt that in a long, long time. The other symptoms didn't improve as much as sleep had improved, but they did improve. Headaches subsided. I could still feel my head. Right now, if your leg isn't sore, you don't feel your leg. If your arm isn't sore, you don't feel your arm. If your head isn't sore, you don't feel your head. It's just there. I could still feel my head, but it wasn't bothersome whatsoever. I would say it's gone. Fatigue improved. I had much more energy during the day, much more concentration. Even though I still felt tired, a little bit fatigued and tired, I was able to do more mental work. What was most interesting for me were the contrast when I was re-exposed. There were several occasions where I had to go back into the city for an appointment or go back home to pick up something, and I noticed that headaches came back and even stronger than before, but not straight away. It was about a 30-minute to 1 hour delay. But after they came back, they would last sometimes for hours afterwards. And I would be tired, I'd be disorientated, I wouldn't be able to focus. Things that should take a very short amount of time took a long time. And this was several times recurring. One thing I'd like to say about EMR is very insidious. It's difficult to connect the dots. It took me 8 years, and I attribute this to 3 main reasons. 1, EMF hazards are not known to the public. If it was something that was discussed around people, around communities, if it was something that was taught in schools, if it was something that was mentioned on the news, then people might scratch their heads, hey, if I'm feeling these symptoms, maybe it's that thing. But because there's no information about that, people don't even think that it's there. It's just there, and you don't see it, you don't hear it, you don't think about it. The second one is it's a gradual build-up. Now, there's 2 parts to this gradual build-up. The first one is the symptoms. It can take years for symptoms to start to manifest. Not straight on and off switch. And just like with my re-exposures, it's not you turn on the Wi-Fi straight away, bam, oh, that's the culprit. It's more of a niggly build-up over time, over weeks, over hours, and then you feel it. And similarly, when you take it away, it's not instantly, well, it's gone, it's fixed, it takes some time. But the second part to the gradual build-up is our environment has very gradually been increasing. And so when people start feeling off, they get used to it, they adapt, they then go on with this new level, and then they start feeling off again. And then they think, well, maybe I'm just getting older, or maybe it's just the new lifestyle. It's very expensive right now. It's stressful. That's what's causing it. Maybe it's something else. It's anything but what I can't see. And the other reason why it's very hard to identify it is it's hard now to find an EMF-free environment. If there were such environments and people could go to it, then people might be able to see the contrast. But because we're constantly in that environment, we can't gauge what it's like without it. I'll give an example. If the levels that we have now were switched on now, and yesterday we had levels and in the past, in the 1960s, from this day on, a lot of people would notice, wow, I'm feeling really off this week, I'm feeling really off this month. What's going on? I don't feel right. Are you feeling right? No. And then they switch it off. Then people go, hey, I'm starting to feel better. Maybe it was the weather. But because it's been really gradual build-up, and it's hard to find that EMF-free environment to have that contrast, it makes it difficult to identify. Now, you've heard the expression frog in hot water. I'd like to modify it slightly. Frog in a microwave oven. Now no, you can still hear me. Frog in a microwave oven, because it pretty much sums it up. The frog doesn't know they're in a microwave oven. The microwave oven is slowly increasing its intensity, and the frog can't hop out of the microwave oven, so it's always there, and it stays in the microwave oven not knowing it's being cooked. So now we move on to the second part, which is the health effects. And human vulnerability, again, electro-hypersensitivity, this affects about 1% of the population, which sounds very small, but in New Zealand, that's 50,000 people. If you think about, and it affects them to the point where they're not able to function normally. They have to make really big compromises. If you think about it, we have, for people in wheelchairs, for disabled people, we have special access ramps. We have lifts. We have parking. We accommodate as best as we can to make their lives easier and livable and manageable. And around about the same number of people who need that sort of access are the same amount of people who are electrosensitive, about 1%. I may be a little bit off on my numbers, but ballpark, it's around there. What's more interesting is about 30% are electrosensitive. Now that's big. That's not 1% you can ignore, that's 1 in 3 pretty much. Now they get symptoms, they're not as strong. They're a lot more mild, they can cope with them a lot easier. They might not get all of the symptoms, they might just get a few, but it does affect them. And that's something to worth consider, because 30%, that's huge. But I will say one thing, 100% are susceptible, as far as we know, because there's not enough studies, are susceptible to the long-term effects. And we'll cover that in the next, a slide after this one. So, hold on. I apologize, the screen is funny because, are you guys still able to see that? Okay? Okay, I won't change it. Sorry, it's a red screen filter if you want to help improve your sleep. Try reduce the amount of blue light you get at night. So this is horribly red at the moment. But if you can still read it, I kept my PowerPoints very simple, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem. Maybe when the pictures start, we'll change it. But I really want to pause on this slide because these are the common symptoms of EHS. I want you to have a look and see, maybe somebody here has experienced these, a number of these. I will make all of these slides available to anyone who wants. We'll post it onto our SaferTech website. So don't worry about take a picture if you want, but it will be available.
Could you just read them out for us?
Absolutely. So headaches, fatigue. Fatigue is feeling tired even after you haven't done that much strenuous either activity or mental work. Concentration and brain fog. Brain fog is a very popular term after COVID. Memory problems. So it's harder to remember things, it's easier to forget. Sleep disturbances, and that could be insomnia, it's harder to fall asleep. You wake up in the middle of the night, or you wake up at some point and you can't fall back asleep. It's a range of those. Depression and anxiety, those things sort of go hand in hand. Tinnitus, which is a ringing, high-pitched ringing in the ears, or different sounds people can hear. Some people actually get skin problems where they use their mobile phone and they get a rash, or they're exposed and they get flushes. It's rare, but it does happen. Joint pain and flu-like symptoms. Now, this is what 100% of people, as far as we know, may still be susceptible to. Neurological effects, cardiac effects, effects on the immune system, calcium efflux. Now, Dr. Robin Kelly has mentioned that as well. He showed a very good picture. Your body is full of calcium, voltage-gated calcium channels. Their job is to open and close and let calcium in and out of cells. And calcium ions are very important for different signalings. What's interesting enough is they've actually found this to be one of the mechanisms, and they've proven it by giving inhibitors to these calcium channels to block them, and they found it stopped some of the results, some of the effects of the EMF. So that's a more or less proven mechanism. But what's also interesting is your brain and your heart has a very high concentration of these calcium voltage-gated calcium channels. So it's no surprise that we're seeing neurological effects and cardiac effects as in the scope of it. Endocrine system, so hormone system, for plain English. Fertility problems is a big one, and we'll see a little bit later one specific study I'll touch upon. Oxidative stresses, simplest explanation for oxidative stresses is if you have wood and you want to burn it, you need oxygen. Why do you need oxygen? Oxygen is reactive, it reacts with it. Oxidative stresses is not necessarily oxygen, it's things that act as oxygen. They can react with other things to form a new molecule. When you have too much oxidative stresses, they start to react with things that you don't want them to react, like DNA. And then you get DNA damage. And then DNA damage, you might have more chances of cancers. One interesting point is diabetes. And this is still under investigation, but there are several studies that have shown biomarkers increase. And diabetes is one of those that is common around people. It's rising and rising every year. There's type 1, which is genetic. 1% of the population has that. There's type 2, which is acquired, which if you're poor diet, not enough exercise, you strain your body, you might be at risk of developing that, but you can regulate that with diet. Type 3 is from EMF. Even people who don't have a poor diet, don't have excess sugar, are getting diabetes, developing diabetes. And there's been case studies of people being able to regulate their diabetes by reducing their exposure. So before we move on, a very important definition to be made, and that is how EMR is measured. And the answer is power density. Now, the units are milliwatts per meter squared, and everything from here on out will be given in milliwatts per meter squared. But the plain English translation is power is the amount of energy per second, and density is how much there is of something in a certain area. Think of population density. So power density is the amount of energy delivered onto a 1 meter by 1 meter square every second. Imagine grabbing a solar panel of 1 meter, shining it at your transmitter. How much power, how much energy you're getting from that, how much power, that's the measurement of radiation. Now we come to, I will very quickly flick through these because Robin Kelly has also mentioned them, and there is too many here to actually go through. We'll be here all night. One thing, these are not all the studies. These are only the studies that have specified a power density. The power density is the very far column here, the far left column, sorry. The category column is what system it affects. So we have fertility, DNA, immune system, cancers, neurological, and such. One thing I will mention is, and it's worth re-mentioning it, is Schumann resonance. So that's the natural resonance of the Earth. How it forms is Earth's got a certain shape. Imagine you have a guitar of a certain shape. You strum the guitar, it will vibrate at its given frequency because that's the geometry. Earth also has a geometry, and lightning strikes and whatnot, they generate a pulse of every frequencies, but the ones that remain are the ones that resonate inside this cavity. And the frequency is 7.8 hertz, and then there's a harmonic at 14, and then 21, and so on, but they die off. What's very interesting about Schumann, one thing I'd like to point out, is this number, 0.000, give or take a 0.33, lots of zeros. That's the intensity of the Schumann resonance. Very small. What's also interesting is humans need Schumann resonance. It's good EMF. They've done studies of people in bunkers where they put them in bunkers underground in a shielded cage where they don't have Schumann resonance, and they start losing their circadian rhythm. They start feeling awful. They turn on an artificial Schumann resonance generator and suddenly they start feeling better. And it's very low what they need. Another interesting thing to point about it is when you measure brainwaves, they're very closely matched with Schumann resonance, and it could be an evolutionary thing. We evolved in coherence with it. So since there is natural resonance, the brain takes advantage of it and falls into its sync. I hope that satisfies your curiosity on Schumann. But then we start going, so this is all below 0.1 milliwatts per meter squared, all of these papers. And this is not a comprehensive list. It's an old one. I haven't had time to update the new one. The new one's about twice as long. But just highlighted here, 0.02, you start getting sleep disorders, abnormal blood pressure, nervousness, weakness, fatigue, limb pain, joint pain, digestive problems. The things I've said at the start of the symptoms, they start showing up in papers. And we will flick through these quite easily, quite quickly. All of these very similar lists that highlight in red of neurological symptoms. The levels we are at now is less than 1, so 0.12 to 0.6, you're starting to get a lot of these papers showing this. This is now below 10. You're starting to get other things like cancers within TV towers. You're starting to get, there's quite a few cancers highlighted here. There's other effects too. Fertility. They tested people's sperm, like male sperm, after Wi-Fi, and they found that it's not as lively, doesn't swim as good, not as potent. So now we're below 50. This is one I would like to mention, and that's on fertility. And this is something Robin also mentioned about potentially irreversible effects. So they had mice in something called an antenna park, and the levels were about 10 milliwatts per meter squared. And after 5 generations of exposure, these mice became irreversibly infertile. They gradually became less and less fertile until eventually they could no longer give offspring, and that's when the experiment ended, because you've got no future generations. Another interesting one is the microwave hearing. So tinnitus, it ties into that. Some people can actually properly hear on and off, not just a ringing sensation. Now we're getting below 100. This is an interesting one because it's to do with cardiac. It's a blinded exposure to 2.4 gigahertz DECT phone. So your cordless phone, the one you have at your house that's not your cell phone, just a cordless phone. They showed heart variability in a blinded study. So it started giving some people slightly different heartbeats than what they would normally have. And we've got immune system effects here, where there's immune system effects before this, but hey, we have to highlight immune system somewhere. Now we're up to less than 10,000. And again, brain effects. So one of the effects of EMF that has been shown in rats, and they haven't done it on humans because not many people want to volunteer themselves to have their brain dissected. But with rats, they don't have a say, unfortunately, and they have found pathological leaks in the blood-brain barrier. The blood-brain barrier is a very important barrier that keeps the stuff that's supposed to go into your brain to go into your brain, and the stuff that's supposed to come out, and none of the bad stuff that's not supposed to go across that. It's there specifically to protect the brain because it's very, very sensitive. And another one on calcium, like we mentioned, the calcium channels and the calcium efflux. This is just one paper that shows that there are changes in intercellular calcium. And a lot of these papers, they have overlap between each other. So again, to the myth of it's not replicated, I think myth busted. Yep. All right, before we go on to the next one, I want you guys to raise your hand if you think the levels are below 0.1. I mean, if the levels are above 0.1. Everyone's got their hands up. Good. Keep your hand up if you think it's above 1. Above 10? Above 50? Above 100? Above 1,000? Above 10,000? Okay, those who've got your hands up, you're wrong. It's below 10,000. So FCC standards are the same. New Zealand uses their ones. It's based on short-term thermal effects, and they've done 3 animal studies where they basically trained them to press levers for food, and then they irradiate them for a short time to very high levels, and when they could no longer press the lever for food, they said, it affects them then. And at that point they said, well, make it 50 times lower than that because we want to be safe. And they did. And that's where their levels come from. Different countries have different standards. Russia, for example, has 100 times lower, and it's based on Soviet literature still. Building Biologist, Bioinitiative Report, and European guidelines have even lower. So these are different guidelines based on, here's New Zealand at the top, then Russia, then Statlenberg resolution, building biologist, bioinitiative, and European, which are based on science and actual biological recommendations, are much lower than even the best standards so far. I think we might really briefly go over this. There's a reason why EMF, artificial EMF and natural EMF are so different on the body. The two most important ones are cohesion and polarization. Cohesion just means a single frequency. If I've got two waves that are same frequency, they're cohesive. If I've got one wave like this and another wave like this, they're incohesive. For your cell towers to work, they need to send one signal for something to catch it. Natural ones, they're all over the place. They're at different frequencies, and they overlap, and because of that, you don't get as much of this wave nature. You get peaks and dips. The other reason is polarization. If I have a flat sheet of paper and I direct it at you guys and I draw a wave on it, then that'll be polarized in this direction. If I polarize it in this direction, that's horizontally. This is vertically. Cell towers, usually in one or the other direction. Natural ones are all over the place. So what happens is different ions in your body, they can actually start jumping with it instead of just moving randomly. They start going up and down. Also, the frequency range is much different. So I started wondering what changed in 2016. The pilot began in 2014 for 4G, and it started in 2015. Uni at Wi-Fi got an upgrade, and there's more places started to offer Wi-Fi. There was very little research on the subject, though. I wanted to know actual numbers, but it's very hard to find. But this is what I did find. From one report on from New Zealand to the WHO, the levels 20 years ago were generally less than 0.2. The highest place was 500 meters from a TV transmitter, and it was 0.4 milliwatts. And a relatively high proportion was attributed to AM radio stations. Ministry of Health reports, the same gentleman Mike mentioned that does the measurements to make sure they all comply. His own data, if you go through each one of those reports and collect the data and see how it's changed over time, from 2003 to 2008, it was about 10 milliwatts. 2015, 2022, 37 milliwatts. So almost a 4 times jump. Again, Spark, there's only data to 2014, but 23 milliwatts up to 31. And this graph illustrates the time series data and how it looks. It's a gradual increase. And this is official data, so it's right. Another thing to note is Wi-Fi density. So these are the different years. If you look down the screen, down the columns, it's a change of 9 years. And you can see around 2014, 2017 is a huge change. If you look down the screen, the last row is very colorful compared to the other rows. The first row is boring. And more closely, around this time period, 2010, 2018, you can see how it's developed. It's really rapidly increased from 2015 onwards. Now for measurements in the real world, and I apologize, this is going to be very small for you to see, and I should probably have changed my screen color by now, but we'll push through. The red and purple, which is not very purple here, it's more red, are the highest emissions. There's a scale on the right, and I'll make these available for anyone who wants to have a proper closer look, but I'm guessing you guys can guess where the cell towers are located. It's in the red spots. And just another closer look, you can see what sort of things going on. One of these is a 5G tower, one is a normal tower, but normal towers also give off quite a bit, so I wouldn't be too fussed about 5G or 4G. They're all not so good. And this is of personal interest for you guys. This is some data from the Devonport region. And you can see most areas are quite green. It's quite surprised. There are some areas that have existing towers and they're purple and red. But we'll see what happens. We'll see. Hopefully they won't happen. But if they do, we'll see what the changes is as well. Questions?
Would you mind maybe ask everyone what side effects they will have or experience now from your first read slide, and headaches and dizziness and brain fog? Maybe some people have 1 and 2 effects, 3, 5, or all of them?
Yes, it depends on, so people who are very sensitive may get quite a few of them. People who are mildly sensitive, they might just get 1 or 2. They might have more trouble falling asleep, or they might have more frequent headaches, or a bit more fatigued. It's everyone's different, and it really depends on how your body is structured and how you react to it. There are other things that can increase your chances of having it. So, for example, if you had chemical exposures before, if you had biological exposures like mold, or got bitten by a tick and had Lyme disease, you're more likely to develop EHS. If you had physical trauma like a head injury, you're more likely to develop it. If you had emotional stress, you're more likely to develop it. Likewise, if you are developing these symptoms, there are ways you can reduce the symptoms. The number one thing is to reduce your exposure. That's the number one thing that works. But there are other things like resetting your limbic system, basically your fight or flight, reducing your stress and retraining your brain. So then you're still going to be influenced by it. Your body is coping with an unknown threat, and it doesn't know what to do with it. And sometimes it can overreact because it doesn't know what to do with it, and it thinks it's really, really dangerous, and the overreaction can cause more symptoms than the actual threat would have. So that's why things like getting enough sunlight, getting your sleep rhythm right, trying to reset your limbic system and your vagal system can go a long way, only if you reduce your exposure. Reducing exposure is number one, and highly recommend, for example, if you're not using your Wi-Fi at night, turn it off, easy. If you can't live without Wi-Fi, then do that. If you have a computer, try plug it into an Ethernet cable and only turn on the Wi-Fi when you really need to sit on the couch and look at your phone. Even better, use your computer for your computer things and not your phone, so then you're not glued to your phone. Little things like that to reduce your personal exposure. Keeping your phone in airplane mode when you're not using it, because these things, they're right next to you and they emit quite a bit to try and get the signal out, and that's your closest source of exposure. So little tips like that.
Well, I know I have done a frequency test, so I know I'm sensitive to that, and within the last 2 years, I have all of those side effects now.
Come and chat to me at the end.
One more question? Yes?
Yes, I live in an apartment. So let's say I'm sort of cutting back all my Wi-Fi and what have you. What about the people in the apartment above and below? Just how wide does it go?
With Wi-Fi, it can penetrate quite well. Like if you look on your phone, you probably get about 20 in an apartment, 20 different signals, and you're not sure who's who. But generally, there's 2 rules of thumb. Distance is your friend, time is your enemy. So the further you are away from the sources, the better. The less time you spend in them, the better. You can do things like shielding, but you have to also be very careful that you don't make the environment worse. And you also still need the natural EMFs like the Schumann resonance and natural sunlight. So that is a very difficult one. But you can look into, for example, silver bed canopies. So your sleep area is at least reduced. And you can buy them from China. You can buy them from other sources, which probably make them in China, but sell it for 2 or 3 times more expensive. Or you can get them from China, and that's what I did. Liz?
The slide with 10,000 in New Zealand, can we just go back to that? Are you saying that we are exceptionally high, or are other countries, is Australia as high? One of the highest countries in the world, or the highest?
Quite a few countries are at 10,000. There's a few countries that are below it, because they all follow the FCC limits. FCC standards, Federal Communication Commission, and they all basically, nobody does their own research. They say, hey, they've done their research, we're using their data. They use their data, they copy paste, and they say 10,000 is safe, so we'll keep it at 10,000. And if you look here, we're not close to that 10,000. It's a little bit hard to read, but the highest points here are 100, 160, and that's right up close, 200 at some places, but most of them are between 10 and basically all the ones in orange are above 1. All the ones in real green are below 0.1. So they've got a long way. They've built in a lot of flexibility. We are not even at even close to what they're allowed to be at.
Who do you think is the world expert on this? Who do you most admire for their study and expertise?
There are a lot of very good people that have put in a lot of work, and I can't name one. But yeah, building biologists, bioinitiative report, European guidelines. They're all people that have done a lot of work, and many more that I'm not even mentioning.
There's a guy.
Okay, one more question.
That guy there.
And all of this information is on the website?
We will make it available. I can't promise you how quickly, but we will definitely make it available.
Thank you, Alexei. Thank you so much. Alexei, clearly he's put in.
All right.
Okay, here we are. He's done a tremendous amount of research and work in creating this information for us, and he's not finished yet. One of the scientists we can recommend highly is Dr. Martin Pall, P-A-L-L. Easy to locate his work, extremely authoritative. What you see here is the basis, the evidence that we have to build our case, the legal case, the political case if necessary. And this continues. Not only the gathering, collating of immense decades of research, but also the immediate work that Alexei and others are doing, going up to cell towers like Tony down in Hamilton, what's coming off the towers, measuring them with meters, recording the data, sharing that information. So you can help too, letting us know, especially tonight, if you're living near a cell tower right now, and more important, are you feeling the effects of this microwave syndrome? In any way, if some of these things ring true to your condition now, Alexei's gone and developed a very good questionnaire, which is available on the information table. It's in a yellow A4 sheet. Don't have a lot of them tonight, but if you feel you are at the effect of this radiation, please take the form, complete it, and return it to us. The information on returning it is on the form. Question, Tony?
Yes, I'm one of those people that suffers from tinnitus.
Say that again, tinnitus.
Yeah, tinnitus, or one of those horrible things. Now, something happened one night. I used to wake up every morning at 3 in the morning and with this great ringing in my ears. I thought, what is this? And one night there was a power cut right over Auckland. My tinnitus went to zero because it knocked out all the power for the power pylons. And that proved to me that there was something going on.
Great. Personal story. This dirty electricity is another fact that we've been living with, and now we have this other level of electromagnetic radiation on top of it. We, in our household, my partner and I, about 4 months ago, turned off the mains at night before bed. We slept right through the next couple of nights. We felt great in the morning. And we do that religiously now. Shut the mains off. It doesn't affect the fridge is fine in the morning. Try it. Just try it. See how better you feel without that constant electrical hum in your house. Yeah, please.
Thank you everyone for all of the scientific information that we've been given. What I'm really interested in, and we've got such a huge audience here that have connections all around the world. Are there any communities around the world that have been able to fight 5G masts? Do we know And if we do know, can we use their experience and use their tactics?
You just led right into our next speaker. Thank you. Can we wait till the end? Okay. So before it gets too late, our next speaker has come all the way from Coromandel. Dr. Wendy Pond is a social anthropologist and all-around environmentalist, very passionate in the core of a very relatively successful, not entirely successful, campaign in Coromandel town to stop a 5G tower going into place. You may have read about it in the media. Wendy, would you tell us your story and what you've learned and what mistakes we might avoid in our campaign?
Tēnā tātou. First, though, if you don't mind, there's something else I want to talk about. I want to talk about village life in New Zealand in the 1940s, because that will give us a standpoint from which we can criticise what is now happening in our communities. So in the 1940s, I grew up in Hinuera, a little Waikato rural village. The government gave us a railway line with a railway station and a requirement that our stock was transported by rail. We were not allowed to use trucks. So that kept the railway line in use. And the government gave us a school which was built on land donated by a local farmer. And the government gave us a very tiny post office, one person at a time, for postage and banking. And then the farmers ourselves, my grandfather was a founding shareholder in the local Hinuera Cooperative Dairy Company. So the shares were held jointly and severally by the farmers. And the cooperative, the dairy cooperative, operated the Hinuera General Store, and at the back of the store there was a Bowser with 2 petrol pumps. So that provided the community's basic needs. And then the community itself built the village hall where we had dances, and the whole family went to the dance. So I learned the waltz and the foxtrot from my uncles at those village dances. And then we had supper with pavlova and sponge cakes with strawberries. And the community built the church, and all denominations used this one little tiny church. And the community built the tennis courts and the bowling club and the croquet green, and so on. And the church water supply was, to this day, it's provided by a pipe which the adjacent farmer runs along his paddock and into the tank at the back of the shed. So the point I'm making in this is that this was a community shaped by ourselves to our needs. Now I live in Coromandel town on the Coromandel Peninsula, and I stand in town at the roundabout and I watch these spotless white utes going through our main street. So first of all, there's the utes, the white utes belonging to Veolia, a commercial transnational foreign corporation manages our water supply. And in summer drought, we are told we will be very severely fined if we water our gardens. Now, at the same time, the commercial laundry in town, everybody therefore takes their laundry to the commercial laundry because there are no restrictions on it. And so one summer, I located the pumping station for our town water supply, the Waiau River. It was in full flow while we had these water restrictions. So I went to Veolia, whose offices now occupy what was once public land where we had our stockyards. And I said to the manager, there's no shortage of water in the river. why have we got water restrictions? And he said to me, the public has no right coming here asking questions. Now, that to me is immensely significant shift. The public has no right asking questions about the management of our own town. And then we've got the white utes belonging to Powerco, a foreign transnational corporation, runs our electricity. Powerco is serviced by Downer Construction Limited, a transnational foreign corporation, does all the work that our council, borough council, used to do in its public works department. Yep. It's now done by a foreign national. Same with our roading. Opus does all our road works. Now, another factor of this is these companies are not employing our men. When we were opposing the erection of a 5G pole in our town, One New Zealand, this company called One New Zealand, a foreign transnational corporation called One New Zealand, they employed a Downer construction group. I didn't know a single one of those men because One New Zealand has its own particular group of Downer pole erectors. So this argument that we're receiving work and salaries from these corporations, it isn't local work that they're providing. So that, I just want to compare these two situations between Hinawera Village in the 1940s and Coromandel Village now. And that raises the question of what can we do as a community? So we've got the world's great scientific minds and medical minds dealing with the effects of electromagnetic radiation and its harm to our lives. And so far, that hasn't stopped the New Zealand government from entering into contracts with the foreign transnational corporations. And it's not just with telecommunications, it's with all the other aspects of our community life. So we need to think very carefully. There will be legal process. There is legal process all over the world. And there is scientific knowledge all over the world. But we're faced with a community situation where our management of our communities has been taken out of our hands. So what do we do? Well, in Coromandel, we've got a community network. And we have to think about ourselves. We have to formulate what is our tikanga? What are the values we want to live by? And some of these are very clear to us. We want to be self-sufficient. We want to have an environment that is free of poisons. We want to have an environment that doesn't have helicopters flying over our head in search of marijuana or whatever that's going on.
Dropping 1080.
Yes, indeed. Yes, we want a poison-free environment. We don't want glyphosate sprayed along our road edges. Also, we've got strong Polynesian and Maori populations that we interact with and intermarry with, and from whom we're learning a very great deal. With Polynesian social organisation, every child born knows their kinship relationship to every other person in their community, and every kinship term carries duties and obligations, which it is very shameful not to fulfill. So that to me is a very important model, to have a community where everybody is carrying out duties and obligations to each other, and of course receiving the benefit of that. So I think this is a factor that's really important in Coromandel, even in our small village. We're all living for our own purposes. There's no upbringing in my life that I would put first the welfare and needs of other people around me. I was brought up always to go in pursuit of my own goals. So this might be a really important shift that we need to consider in our community, is that maybe our priority is not to be successful and wealthy people. Maybe our priority is to ensure the well-being of everybody in our community. And that will take a really major shift. And I think, what can we do as a community so that we can stand up in great force against particularly our councils, because they are the ones that give consent for the telecommunication poles. And I think if as a community we have formulated and stated to the council and to the telecommunications corporations, look, these are our community values, and we're going to stand up and protect our community values, no matter what. I think that would begin to bring the community together, but I think it would be one way in which possibly we might be able to persuade our councils and even our government that we're not going to accept this happening. And somebody spoke out tonight and said, well, they're not paying their rates. And there are a few people in Coromandel who also are not paying their rates.
And we have to stop being slaves.
Yes.
Because they're supposed to be working for tangata whenua, people of the land, no matter what race you are, but it's been reversed. We're plebs.
Yes, well, you see...
We don't like to think they are, but we are.
One of the things...
Serving them.
Yes, I quite agree. If they take $8 billion in profit out of New Zealand every year, that money's not coming back into our community, but it's our money. And one of the things I think of, for instance, if we absolutely insisted that all parents are permitted to stop work at 4 o'clock and meet up with their children after school and go on an adventure with their children, or have a working bee in the street and teach every child how to build a woodshed. There are just such wonderful, endless possibilities in which we could be interacting with our children instead of being slaves, as you say.
It's because they don't do this, because that's exactly what everyone's doing. Slaving away, trying to pay everything.
Yes.
The taxes on taxes, and it's getting higher and wider, and so they're dumbed down.
Yes.
I've been dumbed down too. I'm waking up now.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because we've been in a system. We need to get out of that system.
Yes. So in Coromandel, one of the things we do is we have community dinners, and that's very successful. People come with the children, and that's a chance to relax and socialise too. But I think to have a force, I think we need to have a written statement of what our tikanga is, and then we can really present that to the council, because under our really wonderful Local Government Act 2002, it was established that the council has to conduct a democratic process, which clearly with the cell polls it is not doing. And also in this act, sections 10 and 14, council has to give weight to community views, and we are being completely ignored. So the council is acting unlawfully, and it seems to me this is a really good inroad for us. If we have stated as a community group, this is our tikanga, these are our views, you have to give them weight. if we don't want 5G cell poles or any cell poles amongst our residences, this is our community, tikanga. That puts the council in a very uncomfortable position in relationship to the law. So I suggest you go online and you read the Local Government Act. It's under, you just type in Local Government Act 2002 and it'll come up under New Zealand legislation, and then look at sections 10 and 14, because they do give us as people enormous strength. And it's up to us to claim that. And the requirement that council conducts its relationships with us in a democratic manner. So I will just say very briefly that we occupied the ground where a 5G pole was going to be put in our residential area. We occupied it for 300 days. And up until then, we had cell poles put up on the hills, on the ridges around our town, outside the residential area, and it hadn't worried us. In fact, most of us, including myself, didn't even know they were 4G, 5G capable poles. So One New Zealand came, and a secret process took place whereby council received an application for resource consent and granted resource consent, land use consent, for the pole to go on a road verge in our residential area. Those documents are very, very important. So wherever you have a cell pole, someone needs to be delegated to obtain the resource consent process documents from council. They will reveal a great deal. For instance, in Coromandel, when I looked at the application from One New Zealand acts under the Telecommunications Act. Section 3 says nothing in this act can put aside the Resource Management Act. Now, the Resource Management Act at Section 104 has a list of all the requirements that have to be met when you're applying for resource consent. And when I looked at that resource consent application, it had not met the requirements. So that's why these documents are so valuable. You need to get the application for land use consent, and you need to get the environmental impact report written by the council when it granted consent. And we found so many anomalies. For instance, not only had the applicant, One New Zealand, not complied with the Resource Management Act, but it had made the statement, there are no immediately affected houses, whereas in fact, when I took their plan of the plume that's generated by the pole, and I plotted where the houses were in terms of distance, some of those houses are inside the plume, which means that's an acknowledgement that there is harm being done. But that was not admitted in the resource consent process. So that's a really important thing to do, and systematically to make a list of all these unlawful deviations, and then that can either be taken to Department of Internal Affairs, which is responsible for managing the behaviour of councils, or you can take it directly to your council laws and to the council itself. Yes, so there are all these sort of things that can be done legally. However, I still think it's formulating our tikanga in each case and making that statement to the telecommunications and making it to council. These are the values that we wish to live by, and you are transgressing them. Okay, thank you.
Any more questions for Wendy?
He's there behind. Over the back.
Hey,
He's
here.
got his hand up.
My question directed really to the young gentleman who was talking about the cell towers. Everybody notices around New Zealand all our street lightings have been changed to LEDs, and they've got a little character on top of them. What is the connection between those lights and that little device on top of those lights and the 5G towers that are going up all around New Zealand? Because they tell us that they can only transmit 100 metres. So these cell towers, you've got 5 of them around, going to be put around here. They're not 100 metres apart. Are these lights transmitting it to you and me, to our houses and our cell phones?
I'm going to give a diplomatic answer because I was also curious about the same phenomenon. My curiosity got me to the point where I found a lamppost that had been hit by a car and the thing had knocked over the actual street lamp, and I had a look inside, and unfortunately there was nothing interesting in that one. And then there was also on my street they were upgrading that lamppost as well, and I asked, oh, can I see the one that you're taking down? And I had a look at it, and again, nothing too interesting or suspicious inside that one. The little cones on top, as far as I can tell, they're sensors for the light. But then again, what I do see is there's a lot of roadworks going on where they're literally digging up things, and putting things in the ground, and doing a lot of work that is not doesn't seem necessary, doesn't seem, where is our money going? What I suspect is happening is the groundwork is being laid, so when things do roll off, they can quickly, the fibers in place, the things are in place, and they can quickly pop up on the lamppost, whatever transmitters they need. But those lamp things at the top, they're nothing too suspicious. But I've only looked at 2 or 3 samples. There might be 5 or 10 different variations, so I can't actually, I don't know, it could be in the other ones. The ones I've seen haven't, but I have noticed the infrastructure is being laid out. If you look at China, they've already started doing this where they have smaller transmitters on every second lamppost, and you can see it's a transmitter. It's like with those big ones, but a lot smaller, probably the size of my hand. But then again, it might look different. The size might be different when it's way up high, but they are smaller than the big ones.
The square ones about that big in rural New Zealand.
Yes, yes.
What the hell they are?
So there was when you see on poles, the big round ones, they're the normal transmitters. Just underneath, there's usually either 3 or 6 or sometimes 9 little boxes. Those are the 5G ones. Then you see on random street lamps, like a little black box or whatnot. And this is from some information on a Telegram channel where they did an Official Information Act request, what on earth these things were, and they were Bluetooth recorders. So cars driving by, if you've got a Bluetooth device, they record traffic going to and from. I'm not sure if it transmits or only receives, or maybe it does both, but that is also one of those possibilities of those boxes on random street lamps.
Just all these LED lights give us poor lighting now than we ever had before.
Yes.
When we had the ordinary lights.
Yes, one thing on LED lights is they do generate more dirty electricity, and also you've got to be careful about what sort of LED lights you want to have, because they flicker and they're also in a very narrow spectrum. Our eyes are designed to see a very broad spectrum that we see from the sun. LEDs can only give off very certain frequencies, so it's not as good for our eyes. Similarly, efficient light bulbs like the fluorescent ones, they emit microwaves as well as being dirty electricity contributors to your grid.
Okay, I'd just like to take 2 more questions and then wind up with the actions that we can begin to take here as a community. So there's a question back there. I'll come to you. Yes? Oh.
$25. So
Oh.
those organizers, you guys are decent people, so you don't say anything, but I mean decent. So can you please donate for those people to keep going, because it's very important to keep this group of people going.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I was going to get to that. You did it for me. Thank you.
Oh, it's just for this team here. Down the Oniwa Road on the North Shore, there are so many infrared boxes. When you go down, there's like about 5 or 6, and they've got different types of posts, and they've got sirens on the top, and they've got like little mini cameras on top of those. And I just wondered, the red infrared boxes that are going up, is that like to work out who's in the car, the number plates?
Yes, those sorts of cameras are for smart cities to be able to track movements of cars to and from. If you look at China, it's literally, you can't drive down a street without seeing a big cantilever with lots of cameras on each one, and sometimes they flash when a car goes by. So that's just building up that infrastructure to be able to implement smart roads, 15-minute zones if they need to turn it on because we're using too much carbon and whatnot. China's very developed. Here it's a lot more developed than I would have expected from little old New Zealand on the other side of the world. It's heading that way.
Yeah, but Oniwa Road has just got so many, like there's probably about 4 schools down there, and they're just absolutely saturated. It's the worst street I've ever been down with that many cameras.
Test platform.
No. What they're probably going to do is they're going to take the tax off our petrol, and you're all going to be paying road user charges, but it's going to be hooked up to e-roads, which is electronic. And if they want to switch your vehicle off, they'll switch it off.
Don't have an electric
Because
car.
this thing won't work unless it's wired into your car.
So what we want to do now, thank you, is to take some of the very clear recommendations that Wendy has made about what we can do in this community and begin to rebuild the Devonport community person-to-person infrastructure. We want to stay in touch with each other. There's things like mailing lists and telephone trees. You can sign up on the table over there, but those of you who can stay a little while longer, let's have some open exchange of some very clear steps we can take. And I'm going to start off by saying, the way we deal with those 8 sites is that we demand initially of the local board and then Auckland Council that those towers be relocated to proven safe areas in the community. It can be done. There's plenty of spaces for that. If we must have that technology, let's take it a step at a time and push back. Any other suggestions? Yes.
Have you been in contact with the Hamilton Common Law Group? Because
So that's what I'd like to talk about.
Please, share with that. This is the common law groups which exist all over the country.
Hello. Just some good news is that all of the councils in New Zealand have been served. Served. They've all been served. Okay, so that puts them on the back foot, number one. Number two, in Auckland, so we need to understand, councils are a bit of paper. So you can't deal with a council. You have to deal with a human person. I should say people, I beg your pardon. We're not persons.
No, we're not.
Thank you. So we go for the CEO. So the corporation or the council, we go for the CEO because they are the person that is actually responsible for everything that that corporation does or everything that that council does. I don't know if you're aware, but in the last 8 months, the Auckland Council, the CEO of Auckland Council has resigned. So the first guy went, and then about 10 days ago, our CEO Auckland resigned because he's been served papers, so he's responsible for what goes on. We're pushing back like hell against all of this. It's not just 5G, it's our rates, trying to take our properties off us. They've signed us away with the 2 new corporations that New Zealand has put together and registered in the UK. I don't know how many people are aware of with that. We've got 2 new corporations. New Zealand's actually bankrupt. There is no money. The banks are bankrupt as well, but we've just gone and borrowed a whole lot more. And as I understand it, New Zealand is about $400 billion in debt. Now, interesting that you should bring up, what did you call it, the charge, to put a charge?
A bill of exchange.
Thank you. So bill of exchange. They're not working anymore because what we've discovered is that even if you've got debt, they can put that on the stock exchange and they can make money off it. So every time you issue a bill of exchange, they're going, aha, I've got more money. So the bills of exchange, even though they started out quite well, seemingly are not working very well at the moment. So the Hamilton Common Law Group is a lot of people, and we're working really, really hard. What we would like to do, what the idea of this is that all of the communities like this, Wendy, and I know that Ant helped you with that 5G, and I believe that you were very successful with getting that 5G tower moved.
No, we weren't.
Didn't you claim the land? Didn't the community claim the land?
No, not us.
Not you.
Tairua.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
we failed, but Tairua.
Yeah, and got it in Tairua. Yeah. So there's ways and means for us to push back. And what we would like, what the Hamilton got, what we're actually doing is setting up a whole 5G, specifically for 5G system, where we're going to share information. Exactly what we're talking about is using the legislation against them, but we need to get,
The numbers.
pardon?
The numbers.
Well, it's not so much the numbers, but we need to go out there and we need to find out what they're doing wrong. We understand that Spark, it's Spark New Zealand who's got the wherewithal to push out these towers. The councils are just rolling over, but we also believe that the Environmental Commission is not happy with the way Spark is behaving because they're just going ahead and they're just doing whatever they like. My understanding is that the towers should be no less than 150 metres from any residential house or school, and we know that they're breaking the law on that. So we need the communities to get out there and find what they're doing wrong, and getting that to your central hub, so that we can then get it to the central hub with Hamilton, so we can all work together, so that when we've got all of the information that we need, then we've got the ability to actually go Spark, or this should be the CEO of Spark, because that's the person that's actually the person that's actually allowing all of this to happen. So keep in mind that there's lots of really, really good things going on. Is anybody here aware of our new court, the Royal Crown Court in Hamilton? So that's not very far away from being up and running. And the first people we're going to go for is the CEOs of the councils. Yeah. So take heart. I know it's pretty scary about what's going on, but take heart, because there's a lot of people working really hard, and I would like to be able to connect with you guys so that we can get all this information together, and that'd be great. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
One of the very convenient ways to connect with us, with SaferTechNZ, is every Friday at 11 in the morning, we meet over here at the Devon. And I invite you to come along Friday, any of you that can make it, 11 o'clock. Not too many of you, but I don't know how many people they can handle. But this is when we really get down to our action steps, what we're going to do. And if you live near any one of those 8 sites, you'll see the photos on the wall, 8 sites that have been designated for towers. Find out more about what's going on in your neighborhood, talk to your neighbors, in a way, claim that site for your neighborhood. It doesn't belong to Spark or One or anyone else. It's yours, it's your neighborhood. Stefano wants the land, so please take some local action and let neighbors know and tell them about Safer Tech and come to our meeting on Fridays, 11 o'clock at the Devon.
I can't remember if it was the street lights or the towers, but the data goes all the way back to Israel.
Which road?
I can't remember if they're the towers or the LED lights. I need to double check, but the data goes all the way back to Israel.
Okay. Anyone else, please? Yes. Let's first, please.
Yeah. I wouldn't do it, but I do see on Telegram the odd person just cutting down a tower. And of course, I'm not suggesting it.
No, I burn them in here.
How are they?
They're attached to existing lampposts, that's the problem, so.
Yeah, obviously those ones with the
Yeah.
wires, certainly wouldn't do it to them. But what is the, have they got electricity coming up through the middle?
Sorry, sorry to disappoint. I don't know. Obviously, they do have wires coming up through the top. If you look close up, they're very fat cables. They can carry a lot of energy. But honestly, I have not looked at them in very great detail at any closeness to it to be able to make any comment.
Believe me, we've considered a whole range of ways to deal with this. And right now, we're working with community energy and hopefully legal action, but other means we're not, it's all on the table, as they say. It's all on the table.
Gentleman from Hamilton. Yeah, I'm from Hamilton and I'm in regular contact with people in the UK who fight through planning permission and objections. They can object to towers, and in certain areas only about 30% of them are being put up and the telecos are pulling away. To answer your question, these towers take an awful lot of power, and if you do any damage to them, the fire that can be caused is catastrophic. Wow. And again, I'm with a group in California, and one of their main concerns are the fires that are created from these towers and an evacuation plan for the population. Malibu in 2007 had major fires where 1 million people were evacuated, and the Malibu community have formed an evacuation plan, and they're trying to put that out to all the states. So don't take it into your own hands to cut these things down. They could be a lot more dangerous than what you think. But we're working on it. But there's two things there. An evacuation plan, because there is a risk to them. The chances of them burning is very, very small. But the cost involved would be absolutely horrendous. And another thing I think someone mentioned was discrimination. Discrimination is unlawful, and these towers discriminate against a certain part of the population who are disabled. And I had 4 people in Hamilton who tried to go present to the council. Only one of them would turn up because of the Wi-Fi and things within the area. It was just too much for them to go. And even the one that turned up had to go home straight away. Okay, so
thank you. Yeah, great. Any other suggestions? Yes.
Flamethrowers.
Flamethrowers.
Hi, everyone. I just want to talk a little bit about self-care and how we can look after ourselves. My field is sound healing, and sound healing is meant to be the technology of the future, but it's actually the technology of the now. And it's here to help us to harmonize our body. So we do have power to harmonize our bodies. As you know, EMF is cumulative, and you can either start practicing sounding yourselves to harmonize your body and your cells, or you can go and receive sound healing with crystal singing bowls and other healing instruments that can harmonize, align your body, and give you the sensation again of inner peace and calm. When we are connected with our souls, we usually don't experience depression and illnesses. And so there are many, many possibilities for us now to take our power back so we're not helpless. And I want to say that because it sounds so disheartening for those of us who really care. And there is the spirit that is still alive. And together we can co-create better neighborhoods, and communities. So thank you for coming. It's great. It's wonderful.
Thank you. Anyone else before we say farewell?
Can I say something?
Yes.
I'm a bit nervous, but I'd like to refer to your situation when you
Put it up to your mum.
when you were anxious. I don't really like this.
Okay.
When you were saying you felt anxiousness, I went through that too because I put in a bill of exchange to the council. I felt anxiety because I'm so used to being in a system, and you know we want to be good people, do as we're told, pay our rates, do everything we're supposed to be. But it is a type of it is a slavery, and Sharon, I was going to the same common law, and I really enjoyed what I was learning, and especially about submitting notices and real law against all this fictional law. But it was too far for me, so I joined up with Air, Lands, Sea law, which is on the same page as what Sharon was saying.
LAW.
Pardon?
You mean LAW?
Yeah.
Law, Air.
Yeah. So I forget things. So I've learned a lot, and it's kind of made my eyes open in my environment. For example, there's a small section for sale, and they want to build, this is in West Auckland, that's where I come from. They want to build 13 units and have 14 car parks on this little site. And it's foreigners, as we know, buying up our land. And at the same time, I know that they're doing the geoengineering over our properties. Our roads are still closed. I live near Bethel's. And I spoke to a neighbour not far from me, because I live very rural, and the same things happened where he lives. All his crops died. Sure. His pear tree was laden, but they all shriveled up, and I've had the same. The figs were heaps, but came to nothing. So I'm really, really angry, and I want to fight this. And this didn't happen overnight. It's like when you learn common law or what Air, Lands, Sea have to offer, we go right back to how they've changed things without our permission. And that's what we need to get back, our power. And sometimes anxiety is a good thing, because it's telling you, hey, look at this.
I agree with your statements. And we need to channel our energy into tangible actions. And Sharon, what you've mentioned about your group that are trying to set up a a system in place in order for volunteers or people to be able to do tangible actions, I think that's a really wonderful idea. And we would be thrilled to be part of that. And I'm sure other people here who want to do something, but they're not sure what to do. If you give them what to do, if you give them tasks like that, and people can take little chunks and give their time to, and then they feel better because they're not just talking, they're not just worrying, they're actually doing something tangible. They're putting their energy into something that's useful for you, for us, for everybody. I think it's a very wonderful idea, and I would like to hear we would all like to hear very much more about it, and we would like to use your systems.
Yeah. This is the last question, and we'll wind up. Yeah.
Well, I'm just questioning, because 5G is not good for our health, so why should we not take it from another angle of getting them where it hurts? And let's all take the common law, natural law approach and stop paying our rates.
Yeah.
Really.
And learning
And
about
then
law.
they
And
can
if
come
we
into
learn
the
about
picture with
law.
all this 5G nonsense,
Yeah.
5G, 4G, and then substantiate with proven facts why we must have it. Well, a lot of us are quite aware about so-called smart cities and what that really is, and we're not happy about it.
No.
Nobody will be once they do realise what it's all about. It's all about control, targeting, and we're not going to allow that to happen, are we?
No.
Okay.
You know, the biggest
all about
control we've got
money.
in this country, our fuel supply. We no longer have an oil refinery, we've got 8 days supply. That's right.
Well,
We used to have
aren't they
60 days when we had a refinery. They're going to finish us off with this. Mark my words.
Are we?
This, what you've just spoken to, I see as a very important parallel track to what we are doing with SaferTechNZ. So let me say this to wind up. If you're not able to join us this Friday or next Friday at 11 o'clock at the Devon, please make sure we have your name, contact, either email or telephone, on one of those sheets on the table. What we will do as a group is do a presentation for the next Takapuna Devonport local board meeting about this issue. We'll come on strong. Now, we did this recently on Waiheke with 40 people filling the chamber and not only registering our complaints, but finishing singing together, Te Aroha, from the heart, because this is our lives, this is our hearts, this is our community, and it is time to take back our power. And we know what each of us can do in our own way, and that's a good start. Don't give in to any kind of despair. There are people, there are friends and neighbors who can work with you and support you to do this, and we're here for you too, right?
We could be like Mr. Bates versus the UK.
Mr. Bates.